Welcome to Pagan Artist Spotlight, your informative podcast program dedicated to everyone who follows a spiritual path we call Paganism. Come tune in to our Facebook group and YouTube channel to be a part of our live broadcasts. This is all about community and unity. Now here's your host, Lou Silverwolf Williams.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Pagan Artist Spotlight on the Prairie Land Radio Network. This afternoon, I am joined by my special guest, Anu Dudley. She is a retired history professor and ordained pagan minister, and she is a wealth of knowledge. And we're going to be talking about her book that I got sent called Goddess Cast the Runes. And this is a very interesting book, I must say, because even myself, I have been studying and trying to learn more about Norse paganism, runes, and a lot of different other stuff. So, Anu, I want to thank you for taking time out to join me this afternoon.
Certainly.
And basically, now you actually live in an off-grid community, which is something that I've also looked into doing at one point. So tell me more about you and what's led you up to this point.
Well, I live in an off-grid community because I like living in the woods, not in cities. And I'm not sure what you mean by this point. I've always been interested in being outdoors. And so I eventually came to be able to label that as earth-based spirituality. And when I read one of Starhawk's books many years ago, I realized that I was a witch. I didn't know that, so things have come together as I've gotten older. And I eventually became interested in the runes. That's an interesting story too. So here I am.
Okay, so what got you into your teaching career?
I like to teach, and I learned so much from my students. And so I felt very fortunate to be able to get into a doctoral program and then be able to work at the university. I'm a historian. And it's so interesting to dig into the past and see where we've come from and answer all kinds of questions, especially about who we really are. What is the telling history from the perspective that makes sense to us as ordinary people rather than as generals and presidents and that sort of thing.
Oh, I get that. I completely do. So we're going to get into some questions here. And first one up. Okay. First one that's Mochi. No, enough, please. Enough, please. Mochi, come here. Come here. Okay. First question up. What are runes?
Runes are a collection of very ancient symbols that our ancestors over many, thousands of years developed in order to express the growing reverence that they felt for the earth and for the Earth Mother and for all of the earth energy that they were sensing that was feeding them. And so these are ancient symbols, and we can't even really date them. Archaeologists have helped us to discover some of these symbols that go back, 30, 40, 50,000 years ago. Then they've just sort of remained, but we know that they must be older. And so it's a collection of symbols that show how our ancestors have looked at their experiences, their life experiences, and their experiences with the earth and with each other and with deity. And they eventually coalesced into a system, which was about, maybe we can show that it's at least 2,000 years old, if not, and it's probably a lot older, but coming together as a system where there was a collection of 24 distinct root symbols. And these were carved onto stone, bone, wood. It was only during the Middle Ages that this system became used for literary purposes. In other words, for writing, and it was never for that. And when it wasn't used for that, and they tried to use it for a while, but the predominance of Latin and then German and English and French and those that became written languages, then the runes, they didn't get used very much, and they were they went out of style eventually. But they have remained as sacred symbols to this day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's very true. Okay, now, second question we're going to get into, what is the mythology of the runes?
Mythology, let me just say that mythology itself is the way that our ancestors expressed their own history, their own life experience, and took it from the human level and sort of ramped it up to the level of gods and goddesses. And that's what mythology became. It's called and I'm kind of nervous now, so I'm forgetting the word, but it's a way of taking the feelings, the ideas, and raising it up to this sacred level. And so the runes then just really were symbols that people appreciated in their everyday lives, and they eventually took on deep spiritual and even magical meanings. And so when you say, what is the mythology of runes? I would say that this is the human story made sacred. That's what the runes tell.
Okay. Something else that's going to go along with this. Do creation stories associate with runes?
There's a couple of runes which are particularly focused on creation, but they're focused on the creation the humans do. There was an underlying understanding that the earth creates everything. The earth creates spirit, and it creates energy, and the earth is our mother. And so that's a given. But the runes don't have, an actual creation story like the Bible has, for example, and other religious systems. But it does express how humans create on various levels.
Okay. Now, with you living in an off-grid area, how do you associate your practice, and do you have others nearby also in this off-grid area that come together and share in any type of rituals or practices of any sort?
Yes, we have a grove, which is a name for a pagan gathering. We meet outdoors. We actually have a place in the woods. It's right. I can see it from my office window through the trees. And so, and everybody who lives in and around this community, they come to all of the 8 quarters and cross quarters, the celebrations of the pagan wheel of the year. We just on Monday celebrated Mabon, the fall equinox. And I think it's interesting too that almost everybody in this group has already at some point taken one of my classes to learn about runes. So people are quite familiar with runes. My son, when he built his house, made a beautiful arch that goes over the garden, which has a runic inscription on it. So they're kind of a part of our lives.
Okay. Now, something else that I was going to talk about here. How important is history tied into runes? And what is the importance that people should learn?
That's a really good question. And I would like to point out, and this is what my book is about really, is to reclaim the runes for the mother goddess. The runes were confiscated by this relatively new god in the Norse tradition, Odin. And, he essentially stole them. The runes have a much longer history to tell of people's relationship with the mother goddess, but we nowadays we think of the runes as being possessions of Odin, and that he is this all-powerful, mystical, magical character, and he got those because he stole the runes and got that power. How does history figure with this? I think that it's interesting that once the runes became the possession of Odin, the that was an actual representation of a historical happening, which happened over thousands of years. But the upset of matrifocal societies and the replacement with patriarchal regimes. And the theft of the runes that Odin accomplished just sort of represents that overturning of a much older and a much longer tradition of people recognizing that they were children of the Earth Mother.
Okay. Now, now going along those lines, um, can you give us the definition of, well, the meaning of Futhark and the best envision of a circle?
Well, we get the word Futhark for the same way that we get the word alphabet. Futhark is just comes from the first six symbols in the runes in the first arc. So there's Feyu, Uruz, Thurasaz, Ansus, Rhitho, and Kenaz, and those letters then make up the word Futhark. And what was the second part of that question?
And let's see. Yeah. Why is Futhark best envisioned as a circle rather than the three parallel lines?
Yes. Well, we think of them as in three parallel lines because we're used to reading things just like they're written text. And we generally write text from left to right in lines, one below the other. But the runes didn't come out of a written tradition. They came out of an oral tradition. And when we so looking at them as lines is just a very much more modern interpretation. Now, when I look at the runes, I think that if they're representing the Earth Mother, then it makes more sense to have them be in a continuous circle, one that starts at the beginning and then goes around and comes to the beginning again, just like the pagan wheel of the year. It's a continuous circle. And I thought, well, let's see, where does that the number 3 come from? Why is it 3 lines? Well, the triple goddess is a very ancient figure, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And so I thought, well, let's not call them lines. Let's call them just sections of a circle, and they would be arcs. So there's the maiden arc and the mother arc and the crone arc. And I want to really stress that throughout the history of the runes as a system, they have been referred to as Aetir, the first the first 8, the second 8, and the third 8, and that word means kinship or family. And so the first 8 just means that those first 8 runes are all related to each other in some way. And so I wanted to look at them afresh and ask how are they related. So, and it's not really hard if you want to look at them from that lens to see how the first arc is all gift runes. They're the gifts that the Earth Mother gives to everyone who's born. And so those are our precious gifts for ourselves to grow and learn and appreciate. And the second arc is the Mother arc, and this is the challenge arc. And it is about, it's not because the Mother wants to punish us, but because the Mother wants us to grow and be strong and learn to be responsible adults. And so this is the challenge arc, because all of the runes in this second arc are all, like there's hail, and there's disruption, and there's death, and attack, and things like that. So how do we learn from that? And actually, it's interesting that each of those runes in that arc not only have a challenge, but they also have a lesson and a gift if we know how to look for it. And then the third arc is the crone arc. And that's about, now that we have gotten these gifts and we've learned these lessons and become stronger, what can we give back to the community to make the whole community strong? And so the third arc is actually the community arc. And it shows how we can use our gifts and our lessons to serve the community in all kinds of different ways. So I hope that was a sort of a long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's perfectly fine, because, in a way that it comes back to my goal that I originally set when I first came into the pagan community, was creating community with unity. So that comes like around full circle. Yes. For me. Okay, now something else here that I was going to ask. In your opinion, how important is it for people to understand what runes symbolize?
If we want to have strong communities, if we want to be safe and healthy in ourselves and also safe and healthy in our communities, then going to the runes and seeing what they all mean and reminding ourselves of these natural gifts that we have, reminding ourselves of the challenges that we and our communities face, and then also assuring us that we have the skills to keep ourselves, our communities, strong and healthy. The runes can help us do that, because that's what they symbolize. In the end, they really teach us how to have strong communities and how to be strong individuals. Each of them is a lesson in itself. They're very rich.
Okay. And something else that would go along those lines, because now I practice both a pagan spiritual path and also a Native American spiritual path. And the pictorials that Native Americans use from past, from years past, how would those coincide with what runes portray?
How would Native American portrayals become in sync with runes?
Yeah.
Yeah. These runic symbols have come from cultures all over the world. They didn't just come from Norway. That's one of the things that my book explains, is that, this great Indo-European area, which then, which is, China, India, and all throughout Europe and Africa, and eventually a New World, as people then spread out over the Pacific, and even we're learning to the Atlantic. These values, these understandings, this perspective of what life is all about. We find that cultures around the world, they share these these values and these understandings. And so the runes are just one way of expressing these ideas, and there are other cultures that have different ways of portraying them in a visual way, just like the various Native American portrayals. I have to say that I haven't studied in depth various Native American portrayals. I would say, however, that the values that are pictured in those images are, basically similar to those that we find in the runes. I mean, they're human values, they're human concerns, and they're human solutions.
Okay. All right. Just a second here. Okay. Another question that was brought up for divination. What is the difference between using runes to other for divination?
I would say that my first response would be that it really depends on the comfort of the person who's performing the divination. What is your favorite mode? I mean, I do tarot, I do pendulum, I do dowsing and runes, and I think that you can use them. I mean, I like to use the runes because they're a very tactile, subject matter, and as opposed to cards, which seemed like they kind of raise up a level to literacy and intellectualization. And I really like the runes because they make me feel closer to the earth and to my body. But in terms of the difference between using runes and other forms, it really depends on what you, as the diviner, feel comfortable with, and also what does the person who is asking the question feel comfortable with. And when I do a rune casting, I have the people reach into my rune bag and feel around and pull out the runes that make sense to them. So they're right away. They are physically involved in the process. I think that in some cases that really matters a lot. So that would be a difference. Otherwise, the next most important thing is for the person who's asking the question to really be asking the right question. Are they asking what they really want to know? Do they really understand what it is that they want to know? And if they are really tuned into their question, then I'm not sure that any form of divination is better than another.
Okay.
It really starts with the questioner.
Okay. So I know that there for a little while, I was also trying to learn about doing bone throwing. And as I know that there are some people that can decipher how the bones fall and whatnot, compared to the symbolization of the runes. So it's like, I know that's a huge difference.
It would be, yes. And it would depend a lot on your deep involvement with the bones, so that you sort of know, you understand intuitively what the message is that it's giving you, what it means, what shape they make when they are thrown down. So a lot of that really comes from you. Just as well, when I cast the runes for someone, I have to really understand what the position of the runes means together when they're cast down.
Okay.
And so a lot comes from the reader, as well. Like, how well do you understand this mode? This isn't just a dictionary, You're not just looking at these things and then saying what the definition is. You've got to have a feeling for the whole question and then the whole spread.
Gotcha. Now, in your recollection, What were the earliest forms of runes that were discovered?
Well, when you say discovered, I mean, we can look back for, tens of thousands of years and find symbols which are similar to the runes today. Okay. So those symbols are old, are very old. Now, when we say discovered, sometimes we mean that they are recognized as being a coherent system. In other words, these all belong to a system of 24 symbols. And when was that recognized? And historians now are discovering that around well, a little before, and in the earliest years of the BCs, before the Central Era, then we start to see collections of composites of rune symbols, and so historians start to say that, oh, that's the runic system. So in that regard, recognized as a symbol, as a system, is a little over 2,000 years. But the symbols themselves are much older, but as the system is probably a little over 2,000 years recognized.
Okay. And then one last question that I was basically I was asked to bring up, and in your basically in your own opinion here, can you explain the connection between the runes and earth-based spirituality? I know that you had touched on that with the goddess and whatnot, but yeah, can you get into that?
Well, I've taught, semester-long courses on earth-based spirituality. It's a big topic. And so what I just will say that earth-based spirituality is realizing that that spirit dwells in the here and now, and that spirit dwells in all of us, so that we are part of deity and deity is part of us, and also all things on earth are part of deity, and deity is part of all things, the earth, the trees, the wind. Okay, so so how is that different from the runes? The runes basically symbolize earth-based spirituality. When we get into each of these runes, we can see where the Earth Mother lives and how she expresses herself in all of the runes. That's a very brief answer to your question, which is a very complex question.
Yeah. Sometimes I get into these complex questions, and I get, there are times where I start doing a deep dive into it, and then the universe steps in and says, no, you're getting too close. You're done. I've had that happen. Okay, so now, how long did it take you to write your book here, The Goddess Casts the Runes?
Well, I'd been working.
Oops, I lost her. Uh-oh. Right when I was just getting into the book here. Hopefully she'll be able to get connected back up again. But yeah, if you have a chance to come across this book, the Goddess Casts the Runes, is divination and wisdom of the Earth Mother. And this is a very informative book. I definitely recommend it for anybody's library. If you're into studying runes and taking a deep dive into what runes mean and how they predict our history. Okay, looks like she's back with us. There we go. Okay, so yeah, let's get back into it. So exactly how long did it take to write the book?
Well, when I actually got down to writing it, when I heard from the publisher that it wanted my book, then it took me about I don't know, a year and a half to write the whole thing, a year maybe, because I'd already done a series of radio shows on it and taught the class many times, and so it had come together quite a bit for me before I sat down to write it. It wasn't a long, arduous process. It was a very pleasurable and fascinating process. And I was sorry when I was done writing it and had to send it off because I was having so much fun.
Yeah, I suppose that you, even after you sent it off, you probably have more information that came to you that should have gone into it.
Yes, that's true. And yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see if people have more questions to answer in another edition. Yeah.
Okay. Are you planning on writing a second book?
Oh, I've got a couple of in the works at this point. And nothing actually about the runes yet, but on other subjects. One about earth-based spirituality, and one I think we need a new version of the Wheel of the Year that's really founded in our earth-based spirituality practices. And so I'm right now getting ready to send some queries to see if anybody's interested in publishing one of those books.
Okay, so do you feel that there was more that should go into the Wheel of the Year? Or just make changes to it that coincide with how things are today?
The Wheel of the Year is based on practices which are thousands of years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it would really help us in this day and age, especially, to take a fresh look at the holidays to see what they can mean for us in today's modern world with the earth as it is. I feel really strongly about that. We have a lot more to work to do to be good citizens on this planet and good members of the human race.
Well, that's very true. I agree with you there completely. I definitely want to thank you for taking time out to join me this afternoon. This has been educational and informative for me anyway, because I learn something new every time, which is which is a good thing for me. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. And if anyone has any more questions, you can get in touch with me through my publisher, Inner Traditions, or through the radio station that I produce a show through every week, WERU FM, community radio in Maine.
Excellent. Now, do you do the radio broadcast there on site, or?
I used to go to the station, and then COVID hit, and now I broadcast from my office in the woods.
Excellent. All right. Well, Anu, this has been pleasurable. I thank you for taking time out to join me, and I look forward to catching up with you again. And once you've released one of your other books, we will have to do this again.
Thank you, Earl. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, you're very welcome. You've been listening to another edition of Pagan Artist Spotlight on the Prairie Land Radio Network, and with our special guest, Anu Dudley. And if you have questions for her, you can, in fact, if you want, you can send me emails directly, or else you can email Anu as well. And I will be posting that information up here for everybody. You can reach her. If I get back to it here. Where's your? Okay, which one did I put it under? You can get in touch directly with Anu at her email, and that is anududley94@gmail.com. So you can send her emails, and you can also email me directly at paganartistspotlight@gmail.com. You can also ask questions on the Facebook group and page for Pagan Artist Spotlight. And then this will be going over on the YouTube page here momentarily. Then lastly, this will be going into an article that will be featured on Today's Witch magazine at today'switch.net. And you'll be able to find that coming up in November. So with that, we're going to say pleasant journeys. Have a great day, everyone. And we are going to be out of here for the afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. It is much appreciated.
Thank you, Earl.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. All shows are available to download after our live broadcast. All rights are reserved and may not be rebroadcast for other programs. Join our Facebook group and our YouTube channel so you can keep up to date what is happening in the pagan community. Pleasant journeys, everyone.